Arrays are frequently used in the life of a normal developer. Everywhere you go, whether you are freelancing or at a company, you always need to use arrays as data structures. And now we are going to go over 10 of the most popular array functions that you can use in JavaScript. So we have two arrays. One is a more complex array, and we are going to use this for more complex functions. And another one, which is just a simple number array. So this is really basic, but the first function that I want to go over is the push. The push will basically put another element to the end of your array. So looking at an example, numbers.push, and I want the 11 to be there, for example. And if you read what the function does, it says appends a new element to the end of the array and returns the new length of the array. So if I say let push length, the push length is also going to be 11. So just to distinguish it, I'm going to put 12 at the end of the array. And then we are going to console log the push length. And we are also going to log numbers array. So you can see there that the length of the array is 11 because there were 10 elements in it, added one. And then at the end of the array, there is the 12 given. So that's it for the push. As for the pop, it's going to remove the element that we've given. For example, 12, because it removes an element from the end of the array. It was numbers.pop. And that's it. You don't need any parameters in here. And the reason I gave a pop here, a variable, is because if you read it through, it says remove the last element from an array and returns it. So the 12 is going to be returned. I'm going to console log these out as well. So if you have a look, 12 is popped from the array. This is what it's returning. And if I again console log the numbers, it changed the base array. So now there is only the 10 in it. The 12 is missing. So now let's have a look at the unshift. If you read it, it says inserts new elements at the start of the array and returns the new length of the array. This time I'm not going to console log this. It would be the same as we did at the push. And let's say I want to insert 13 there. And I'm only going to console log the numbers array after this one. You can see there is the 13. The unshift is working. Now the opposite of unshift is actually going to be shift. Removes the first element from an array and returns it. If the array is empty, undefined is returned and the array is not modified. So again, it's the same as the pop. It returns the removed element. And if I just do it now, we don't even need the parameter here. Just like this, the first element is removed. You can see how the array is going. And now we are at an intermediate function, if we have to rank this in difficulty. So the for each is going to loop over the elements in an array, and we can give it a function, and that function will be executed for each item. So let's have a look. Numbers.forEach, or maybe let's work with the complex array this time. So people.forEach, and this for each is going to receive an arrow function. So remember, whatever is inside this is going to get executed. It will give an item, or this time a person. You can choose anything you want for the name. This will be the first one, and the second parameter is going to be an index. We'll talk about the third variable as well, or the third parameter as well, in a minute. So all I'm going to do is now console.log the person, and I'm also going to console.log the people index. All this is going to say is go over all the elements. You can see it's always double because the index is going to start from 0. If I just remove this and say console log the index, you can see 0, 1, 2, 3, and it just went over the elements and did all that had to be done. Now what if for some reason you cannot access the people array, for example? Then you have the third parameter, which is the array, And you can just simply say array, the indexed element, and console log this one. You can see it went over the elements and it's just as normal, just we did before. But let's say you run this through a filter function, which we are going to have a look at in a minute. The filter function will return a new array which you do not want to store, you do not have access to it. Then you use the array parameter to access that filtered array. Alright, so these are the three parameters. Most of the times you are going to only use the person or the item that you are going to give. More often you are going to use the index, and this is quite rare. I don't think I've ever used the array parameter before, but it is there for those if you ever need it. Now as for the map parameter, it's somewhat similar to the map function. So we are going to say people.map. If you have a look, a function that accepts up to 3 arguments, the map method calls the callback function one time for each element in the array. So yet again, it's going to take in the same arguments that the for each did, but this time I'm only interested in the person and the index. And this is going to be in an arrow function. So inside the arrow function, the person and the index, and it's going to return us a new array. And let's say we'll set the person dot name. Each person's name is going to be set to Bill. Then after this, if I console log the persons or the people, you can see it changed the structure of our array. So the map function is used for transmuting arrays and really playing around with it. If you are using a framework, for example, then you usually re-render or just go over in React, for example, the elements with the map function. Coming to the filter function, it's going to filter out by a condition of which elements should be returned. So if I say let filtered array, the filtered array is going to be equal to the people dot filter, and we are interested in the, for example, people above 20. So we are going to say return. This is going to be a person right here, as before. You can also rename it. So return the person that is at least 20 years old. And you can see if I log out the people now, it's not going to do anything. It didn't change the array. But if I console log out the filtered array, then yes, and here not person.age is greater than, then you can see only 3 people are in there. And you can see it did not change the base array, and we can actually do the same with the map function. If we say that let mapped is going to be equal to the people.map, and here we return person.name, and after the people we console.log the map. So it's going to return us a new array that you can see there. It's all of them are bills. So it just basically created a brand new array for us if you use the return syntax at the mapped function as well. But we are going to move on to the reduce function, and this is the most complex function in my opinion, because the naming is not the best. The reduce function is given because when you run the reduce function, it's going to go over some operations, and what it's actually going to say is reduce the array to one number. So for example, people.reduce is going to get a callback function, and inside this one, we, for example, want to sum up the age of all the people. Then we can say this sum. This will be a counter that will count this sum. It will make sense in a minute. And then the person. Inside this, we are going to say return and sum plus person.age. And here, after the brackets, we can say the initial value of the sum, which will be 0 by default. Now what this is going to say, there is a sum which has a default value 0, and there is the person. We are adding together the sum and the person and returning it. And by returning it, it will remember the value from each return, from each iteration, and the sum is always going to change. So at the let's console log this. Let sum equals this. You can see it's 95. But if I console log here this sum, you can see how it adds it together. So by default it's 0. Then the next iteration, it starts off at 18 because there was someone who was 18 years old and it added to it. And this is because we returned it, it always remembers and adds up the values. So you can perform operations with this. You can even divide, do some average, all that stuff. It's really flexible, and if you get into a company environment, many people use the reduce function. So you see a lot of examples to that, but keep in mind that this is the most complex, and to that maybe even the most useful one. So now we're coming to the includes function. This is going to return us a Boolean value, and it's really simple to use. Since it's a simpler function, we'll go on the numbers.includes, and then the search element, let's say, does it include 10? And since it returns a Boolean value, we can console log this. And you can see it says true. But does it have 100 in it? No, it does not. So it's all that simple. You give it an element to search for, and it's going to say whether it is included or not. And now, as for the last one, the find function, we are going to search for a person in the people array. So people.find, this receives an arrow function like this, so person, and we are not going to say the brackets here. We are looking for the person who has an age of 20, for example. And then we are going to console.log the searched person. You can see there is Bill, who's 20 years old. If I come here and comment these all out, because we made some transmutations to the array, you can see Emily is of age 20 by default. And let's say I'm looking for someone who is 200 years old. Well, it's going to drop us undefined. Or you could also search by name. So I'm looking for someone whose name is John. Then it gives me the right object, the name with John, age 18. So with that, we are finished. The 10 most popular functions in my opinion. Of course, one would argue there are more. For this video, I only wanted to show 10. If you found value in this video, consider giving us a like, maybe even subscribe. Other than that, I hope to see you in the next one.